We in fact look into one of the most disturbing aspects in the national capital. That is, the air quality in Delhi-NCR has continues to deteriorate. Now on Monday morning, the overall air quality in the national capital was recorded in the very poor category, with an air quality index of 306, up from 302 on Sunday. The overall air quality has transitioned from poor to very poor category, as the readings have indicated from today's morning reports. It's being said that on Sunday, the overall air quality was recorded at 266 in the poor category against 173 on Saturday. This is the progressive manner in which the air quality in the national capital region has been deteriorating over the last 3 days. Commuters are facing tough time due to the smog conditions that are there on the road. Most of them have to deploy their lights to ensure that they can see through the smog. Smog is said to be quite heavy in certain areas of Delhi and NCR region, especially early in the morning, and commuters who have to travel between the suburbs and the Delhi business district are finding it quite difficult to move into those regions. Meanwhile, there has been responses coming in from the Delhi government over this, and also many of them asking Delhiites to take the proper precautions as and when required. AAP's Gopal Rai has reacted on the high pollution in Delhi and said a meeting was being called with all the concerned departments to discuss the execution of the GRAP Phase 2.
अभी फिलहाल थोड़ा सा पोल्यूशन हमें फील हो रहा है, क्योंकि हम डेली चलाते हैं तो हमें वो वेदर पता लग जाता है, तो थोड़ा बहुत पोल्यूशन है, बट ठीक है, बेरेबल है, इतना कोई दिक्कत नहीं अभी तक। हाँ बिल्कुल बढ़ेगी, जैसे दिवाली का सीजन अप्रोच करता है तो थोड़ा सा हो जाता है, हमें विजिबल भी होता है कि ठंड में यहाँ पे इतना फॉग लगता है तो वो पोल्यूशन विजिबल होता है और वो काफ़ी दिक्कत करता है। तो हम साइकिलिंग छोड़ के कुछ ऐसा एयर स्पोर्ट यूज़ करते हैं जिसके अंदर कम थोड़ा एरोबिक हो, पर हाँ फीलिंग डिफिकल्ट होता है।
देखिए, जो मौसम विभाग का जो पूर्वानुमान जो है उसके अनुसार दिल्ली में अब ठंड जो है वो बढ़ने लगी है, और साथ ही साथ जो हवा की स्पीड है वो भी कम हुई है, जिससे प्रदूषण के स्तर को बढ़ने की संभावना है, क्योंकि जो गैस हैं वो अब वायुमंडल में बहुत ऊंचाई तक नहीं जा पा रही हैं, तो जितने पार्टिकुलर मैटर हैं वो अब नीचे आ रहे हैं, और उसको देखते हुए अब दिल्ली के अंदर ग्रैब का जो दूसरा चरण है उसको लागू कर दिया गया है। जितने ग्रैब के दूसरे चरण में जितने स्टेप हैं उसका दिल्ली के अंदर मजबूती के साथ इम्प्लीमेंटेशन हो, इसके लिए जितने संबंधित विभाग हैं उनके अधिकारियों को आज दिल्ली सचिवालय में उनकी मीटिंग बुलाई गई है, जिससे कि उसकी कार्ययोजना बनाई जाए और मजबूती के साथ ग्रैब के जो नियम हैं उनको दिल्ली के अंदर लागू किया जा सके, जिससे कि जो चूंकि मौसम तो अपने हाथ में नहीं है, लेकिन जो सोर्सेज हैं उनको कंट्रोल किया जाए, जिससे कि जो सेहत पे असर पड़ता है वो कम से कम हो सके।
My colleague Shalini Bajpai was at Akshardham and she gave us this report on the deteriorating air quality in that area.
जैसे जैसे दिल्ली का तापमान घट रहा है वैसे प्रदूषण भी बढ़ रहा है। मैं आज का AQI अगर देखेंगे तो वो वेरी पुअर कैटेगरी में पहुंच चुका है, और इस वक्त मैं अक्षरधाम पर हूँ। यहाँ से तस्वीरें देखिएगा, धुंध किस तरह से दिल्ली को घेर रही है। धुंध की चादर ने दिल्ली को पूरी तरह से ढकना शुरू कर दिया है, और अभी दशहरा बाकी है, इसके बाद दिवाली तक प्रदूषण इसी तरह से बढ़ेगा। और ये मौसम विभाग का अनुमान है कि अगले 2 दिन में ही प्रदूषण जो है 350 क्रॉस कर जाएगा। अब मैं आपको बताती हूँ सफर एयर क्वालिटी सर्विस जो देता है वो क्या बता रहा है। तो मैं अगर दिल्ली ओवरऑल पे जाती हूँ और देखती हूँ कितना है आज का AQI, तो देखिए 306 पहुँच चुका है। जो कल तक 266 था वो आज 306 हो गया। कल पुअर कैटेगरी में था और आज वेरी पुअर कैटेगरी में। तो कहेंगे बहुत तेजी से दिल्ली की हवा खराब हो रही है।
Well, Agniveer Gawate Akshay Lakshman, stationed at the Siachen Glacier, the world's highest battlefield and considered to be the most inhospitable of the regions in the world, became the first Agniveer to lose his life on the line of duty under the Agnipath scheme for soldier recruitment. Now, what we understand is that the Army's 14th Corps in Leh posted on its social media, and this is what it had said. Amidst the silent snow, they remain ready to rise and march again when the bugle calls. The entire Fire and Fury Corps pays tribute to Agniveer operator Gawate Akshay Lakshman for his supreme sacrifice in the line of duty at the unforgiving heights of Siachen. Our deepest condolences to his family. This is the tweet that was put out by the Corps, and what we understand is that the Army's 14th Corps had said that they are in touch with the family members, and all the requisite respect to the soldier who died on the line of duty is being given by the Army. Lakshman lost his life at one of the highest battlefields in the world, and the 14th Corps said that their deepest condolences have been expressed to the family of Lakshman. The news of his death prompted criticism, meanwhile, on social media, particularly from the veteran community, highlighting the contrast between Agniveers and regular soldiers whose families receive pension and other benefits in the event of their death while on duty. This is what the financial aid to the Agniveer family, in fact, looks like. This particular aspect of it, it shows that the contribution of 8 lakh from the armed forces for the battle casualty fund would be in fact looked into. In fact, at the moment, what we understand is that there was a huge fight on social media regarding this. 48 lakh would be given as non-contributory insurance when it comes to the financial aid. Ex gratia of 44 lakh would be given to the Agniveer families. 30% of the Agniveer person's salary contributed by the Agniveer to the Seva Nidhi scheme. These are some of the financial aspect of it, as the entire controversy took the social media by storm. Contribution of 8 lakh from the Armed Forces Battle Casualty Fund also would be there for the Agniveer. The entire process of the Agniveer's financial aid had to be revealed because of the ongoing spat between veterans and others on this issue. Meanwhile, let us in fact take a look at what's happening on the India-Canada front. Now, after Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau pulled out 41 diplomats from India and blamed the government for making it unbelievably difficult for millions of people's lives in India and in Canada, the External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said in return to it that India invoked the provision of parity in Canada's diplomatic presence in the country in view of the concerns over interference in New Delhi's affairs by Canada. The External Affairs Minister also said that India is likely to resume the issuance of visas to Canadians if it sees progress in the safety of India's diplomats in Canada.
Finally, there's this whole issue of parity, that the size of how many diplomats there are of one country versus how many diplomats there are of the other country. Parity is very much provided for by the Vienna Convention, which is the relevant international rule on this. But in our case, we invoke parity because we had concerns about continuous interference in our affairs by Canadian personnel. We haven't made much of that public. My sense is over a period of time, more stuff will come out and people will understand why we had the kind of discomfort with many of them which we did.
Mallikarjun Kharge wrote a letter to Prime Minister Modi opposing the deployment of senior bureaucrats to showcase the achievements and schemes of the government. In response to the letter, BJP National President JP Nadda said that it may be an alien concept to the Grand Old Party, but public service delivery is the duty of the government. This came after Kharge took strong exception to a government order dated October 18, which states that the senior officers of the ranks as high as Joint Secretary, Director and Deputy Secretary are to be deployed to all 765 districts of India. Nadda also said that it is baffling for him to see the Congress party having an issue with public servants reaching to the grassroots. In fact, Kharge's letter says that they are deployed as Rath Prabaris to showcase BJP's achievements of the last 9 years is what we understand. This is of grave concern for multiple reasons. JP Nadda, in fact, went ahead and hit out against the Congress on this matter, and it is being said that when it came to this, JP Nadda hit out saying public service delivery is the duty of a government is what the hit out statement from the BJP has been. It may be an alien concept to the Grand Old Party is what JP Nadda said when it came to it. It baffles me to see Congress party have an issue with public servants reaching the grassroots. Now, the first meeting of the Telugu Desam Party and the Janasena Party's Joint Action Committee will be held in Rajamundry. The objective of the meeting is to strategize and accelerate political activities in the state against the YSRCP government. TDP General Secretary Nara Lokesh and JSP Chief Pawan Kalyan will preside over the meeting. Both the TDP and the JSP has in fact announced that the names of the leaders to represent the coordination committee will also be put across, and the leaders from both parties will discuss the joint action plan for addressing public issues. The latest political developments and steps for better coordination between the two parties are being discussed as the elections approach in Andhra Pradesh. Now, the meeting is to accelerate political activities in the state, and it is considered to be a very important meeting between the Janasena chief as well as Nara Lokesh in the background of TDP Supremo Chandrababu Naidu being in jail. Chandrababu Naidu was in fact arrested and over corruption charges and has been placed in jail. Political action against the YSRCP has been the common ground for the Janasena as well as the TDP, and both of them are eyeing influence in certain regions of Andhra Pradesh to upset the YSRCP's calculations for elections in those regions. Karnataka, meanwhile, has decided to allow Muslim students to wear hijab while appearing for competitive exams in the state. Dr. M.C. Sudhakar, the Higher Education Minister of Karnataka, provided clarification on his decision after attending a review meeting chaired by the Chief Minister, Siddaramaiah. Now, the minister stated that students who wish to write examinations while wearing a hijab will be permitted to do so. However, he also urged those arriving with a hijab to reach early at the examination centers for frisking in order to prevent any sort of malpractice. He also went on to say that people are free to dress the way they want. This is a secular country. Students will be checked before the start of the exams, is what Sudhakar said. The decision has upset several pro-Hindu organizations in the state who have requested the government to reconsider its decision. They've also threatened to stage a protest against the government's decision if it is not revoked. It is day 17 of the intense Israel-Hamas war in Gaza. Well, today marks day 17 since Hamas carried out attacks on southern Israel, resulting in the loss of more than 1,400 lives and the kidnapping of over 200 Israeli citizens as hostages. Here's the latest update from day 17 that we are getting in. Israel is said to have tried for a ground invasion near Khan Yunis. There was an incursion that was allegedly carried out, but Hamas says it thwarted those incursion attempts. Israel's tank has mistakenly, meanwhile, fired into Egypt and hit a post with minor injuries for those who were inside the post. Israel has in fact clarified why it happened. Israel has continued to pound Gaza. Airstrikes are continuously there on Gaza, while Israel keeps with its order asking Gazans to evacuate North Gaza. Death toll now reaches 6,142 in the Israel-Hamas war. The death toll has been climbing in the recent days as the war between IDF and the Hamas intensifies. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron is slated to visit Israel in the coming days after a direct talk was conducted by Netanyahu and Macron. Meanwhile, 212 people are being held as hostages by Hamas. This is according to the Israeli military, who has been keeping a tab on the captives taken by Hamas during the October 7th invasion of southern Israel. Meanwhile, the United Nations has also said that the humanitarian situation in Gaza is getting catastrophic. There is no fuel, there is no power, and there is very little medicines in overcrowded hospitals. Meanwhile, an Israeli soldier was killed by an anti-tank missile on Sunday, October 22nd. What we understand is that during a raid into the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip, Israeli troops have been conducting these raids across the border to clear the area and gather intelligence about the missing individuals and captives held by the militant group Hamas in the enclave. Army spokesperson David Hagari, in a televised briefing, said that during the operations, a soldier from the Israeli Defense Forces lost his life and 3 other soldiers were injured.
Israeli forces carried out a raid today in Gaza territory near the border as part of efforts to prepare the space ahead of an attack as a continuation of gathering intelligence regarding missing persons and captives, a national mission of top priority. During one of the raids, an Israeli Defense Forces soldier was killed and 3 soldiers were wounded. These have been notified.
Now, amid the ongoing Israel-Hamas war, the Israeli military accidentally fired and hit an Egyptian post. One of its tanks is reported to have mistakenly fired, inadvertently hitting the Egyptian post near the Gaza border, even as the IDF continued to bombard the Gaza Strip. The Egyptian military said that the blast caused minor injuries as well. The IDF, in fact, went to Twitter and try to explain what had happened. The IDF expresses sorrow regarding the incident near Kerem Shalom area. The incident is being investigated and details are under review. The IDF expresses sorrow regarding the incident is what the IDF has come up. Meanwhile, the Egyptian army stated that Israel had immediately expressed its regret over the unintentional incident and an investigation is underway from the IDF on what actually happened. The Egyptian media, citing witnesses, stated that Israeli strike won't disrupt the passage of aid to Gaza. Meanwhile, in a joint statement, the Israeli Defense Forces and the Israel Security Agency have said that IDF fighter jets took out Mohammad Khatmash, who was the deputy head of the Hamas artillery unit in the Gaza Strip. He was responsible for the coordinating artillery operations in the Central Brigade of Hamas in Gaza. Khatmash also played a significant role in planning and carrying out rocket attacks on Israel in previous conflicts. Khatmash was responsible for fire and artillery management in terror group's Central Camps Brigade and played a significant role in planning and execution of the organization's fire plans against Israel in all rounds of fighting in the Gaza Strip. Israel said its aircraft struck Hezbollah targets in Lebanon and that one of its soldiers was hit by an anti-tank missile. In cross-border fighting that the Iran-backed group said killed 6 of its fighters. Meanwhile, Israel has been targeting Hezbollah in the Lebanon sector, and the tension has been rising in that region as well. It is being said that at least 6 Hezbollah fighters have been killed in the latest skirmish. The West Frontier region is also said to be again tense with the deployment of Israeli forces as well. It is also being said that as the war progresses against Gaza's Hamas terrorists, the Israeli military has also been cautious about its border front with the Lebanese, where the Hezbollah is said to have taken up shelter, and also at the same time targeting Israel from Lebanon's southern side. The hostilities have forced residents, meanwhile, on both the sides to flee their homes. Israel's military says 7 soldiers have been killed since October 7th. Hezbollah says 19 of the fighters in total have died in the war with Israel right now. Hezbollah has been having skirmishes in the northern border with Israel, and there have been constant exchange of fire and brief artillery exchanges as well in that region. Meanwhile, the violence has also resulted in the deaths of civilians and journalists as the border with Lebanon starts becoming more active, especially as IDF keeps a watch, as well as Hezbollah coming up with statements saying that they would support Hamas in its war with Israel. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has issued a stern warning to Hezbollah, cautioning them about the potential consequences of going to war with Israel. He emphasized that such a conflict would bring immense devastation to both Hezbollah and Lebanon. Netanyahu also expressed concerns that Hezbollah's actions could escalate into a broader regional war, though he couldn't confirm whether Hezbollah would fully commit to such a war. My colleague Manish Shah was at the Lebanese border. He gets us the latest of what's happening on that front. In fact, it is one of those border areas that has become quite active in the last 3 days, and efforts are on by Israel to ensure that there is no entry of Hezbollah with repeated warnings. My colleague Manish Shah gets you the latest from that side of the border in Israel.
Right now, I am at Israel-Lebanon border, and this place is known as Kiryat Simona. This is one of the 42 places where the Israeli government has asked to vacate it. All the civilians who are staying here, who are living here, they have been asked to vacate it and go to some secure place, because the Hezbollah is continuously attacking on these area. You can see the mountain, and top of the mountain, this is the Israeli post. From this location, continuously IDF attacking the opposite side, the Hezbollah. And the Hezbollah is also attacking this side, and most of the time, those rockets are coming near these area. And that's why, for the security of these peoples, the government has asked them to vacate these locations, go to some safe place, and the peoples are going out. There are very few peoples here. Most of them have already evacuated, but some of them who are here, they are going out, so that these places only will be used by the armed personals. Right now, I am moving around this area, and I have found lots of army vehicles and the military posts. All these are deployed here, and at the same time, you can see this area where I am standing right now, and though mostly these area are totally empty, no one is here. All the shops, markets are closed now, and the people who are here, they all are going out to find some safe places. So this is the location here where everyone is watching now.
Well, and what could be considered as a possible escalation? Israel had struck airports and its operations in Syria. 2 main airports in Syria are said to have come under Israeli attack, and citing a military source, what we understand is that the attacks was to stop any sort of such airfields being used against it. Now, following the airstrikes, flights were rerouted from these airports to Latakia. These strikes, which hit Damascus and Aleppo international airports simultaneously, marks the second such occurrence this month, and Israel has been quite cautious with its northern borders. As we already said, that with Hezbollah in the northern border, Israel has been having an active border where skirmishes have been taking place with Hezbollah. Meanwhile, the Syrian attack has come out as surprise. The Syrian airfields have been taken out completely, the strikes rendering them inoperable. The military has also said that the strikes originated from the Mediterranean West, and this is said to be one of the crucial junctures where the border with Syria is in fact taken into account, and one of the dispute factors between Syria and Israel being the Golan Heights.
Siege of the Strip since the
Now, what we understand is that the Aleppo airport has also been destroyed right now. Israeli targets Syrian airports, and Israel has in fact carried out with the airstrikes on the Syrian airports as such. Airstrikes have put 2 Syrian airports, Damascus and that in Aleppo, out of service. It is being said that in Damascus, at least one person has died because of the attacks on that particular airport. Now, as trucks carrying humanitarian aid crossed into Gaza, some Gazans said it was far from what was needed to help over 2 million people who is currently under siege in that strip.
The first convoy of trucks carrying humanitarian aid crossed into Gaza Saturday from the Egyptian border. It comes after 12 days of total siege of the Strip since the October 7th attack on southern Israel by Hamas militants, which killed 1,400 Israelis. But for many who have been displaced in the growing conflicts, 20 trucks are simply not enough for the enclave's 2.3 million people. Where is your humanity? We need to know what is being done, says this man, who is calling on Arab countries to send help. Before the outbreak of war, an average of about 450 aid trucks were arriving daily in Gaza. Since the October 7th attack, Israel has hammered Gaza with airstrikes. Here, in a crowded school in Gaza's south, Tahrir Tabash and her children are among hundreds of other families taking shelter from Israeli bombardment. She says that if her children hear so much as a chair being moved, they jump in fear.
Our children suffer a lot at night. They cry all night. They pee themselves without meaning to. And I don't have time to clean up after them, one after the other. The place is full. I can't take care of my children, clean for them, I can't. There is not even 1% of a good, healthy, and safe life for a child. There is no safety. If we don't die from war, we will die from epidemics and diseases.
More than 4,000 Palestinians have been killed, including hundreds of children, and 13,000 wounded in Gaza, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. The United Nations says more than 1 million have been made homeless. There are no safe bomb shelters in Gaza, where over 50% of Palestinians live in poverty. In Egypt, Arab leaders condemned the siege of Gaza at a summit convened hastily to find a peace settlement. But the absence of Israel and senior U.S. officials at the meeting undermined any prospect for halting the escalating war.
Hamas has released 2 American hostages, a mother and daughter, marking their first known hostage release in the conflict with Israel. Judith and Natalie Ranan were kidnapped during Hamas's surprise attack on Israel and were received at the border by the Israeli forces.
The Islamist group Hamas has freed 2 American hostages, a mother and a daughter, the first known hostage release in the war between it and Israel. Israel's military spokesperson said Judith and Natalie Rana were kidnapped during Hamas's surprise attack on Israel on October 7th, and that they were received on the border by Israeli forces. The International Committee of the Red Cross says it transported them through Gaza. The Hamas attacks in Israel killed 1,400 people. Around 200 were taken as hostages. Hamas says the mother and daughter were released for humanitarian reasons and, quote, to prove to the American people and the world that claims made by Biden and his fascist administration are false. They also say that the hostage release came from negotiations by the government of Qatar. This was U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken.
We expect a team from the U.S. Embassy to see them very shortly. Over the coming hours, they'll receive any support and assistance that they need. The urgent work to free every single American, to free all other hostages, continues, as does our work to secure the safe passage out of Gaza for the Americans who are trapped there. In this particular instance, I want to thank the government of Qatar for their very important assistance.
Meanwhile, Israeli airstrikes continue to pound Gaza now 2 weeks after the Hamas attacks and have killed over 4,000 people. Hamas has said about 20 of its hostages were previously killed in airstrikes without giving details. It also says a further 50 hostages are being held by other militant groups.
Meanwhile, Israel continued to pummel targets in Gaza as well as Hamas supporters in Lebanon and Syria. Medical sources in Gaza said that more than 200 Palestinians were killed in Israeli airstrikes overnight. In Gaza's Khan Yunis, the funeral was in fact taking place of a family of 7 members who were killed in an airstrike that hit their home at dawn. We have more on this.
Concerns over the risk of a wider Middle East conflict increased on Sunday as the US dispatched more military assets to the region. That's also as Israel continued to pummel targets in Gaza, as well as Hamas supporters in Lebanon and Syria. Medical sources in Gaza said more than 200 Palestinians were killed in Israeli airstrikes overnight. In Gaza's Khan Yunis, this funeral was held for 7 family members killed in an airstrike that hit their home at dawn. Israel began its unrelenting airstrikes on Gaza, one of the most densely populated places on Earth, after Hamas gunmen breached the border on October the 7th. Their rampage killed 1,400 people, most of them civilians, and saw 212 hostages taken back to Gaza. The enclave's health ministry said on Saturday that Israel's retaliation had killed more than 4,000 Palestinians, including hundreds of children. Israel has amassed tanks and troops near Gaza's fenced border for a planned ground invasion and, according to an Israeli army spokesperson, intensified their bombardment overnight. Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari said the deputy chief of Hamas's rocket force had been killed and that killing, quote, terrorists and seniors was their priority. In neighbouring Syria, where Hamas's main backer Iran has a presence, Israeli missiles hit Damascus and Aleppo international airports, according to Syrian state media. Israel also said it had bombed Iran-backed Hezbollah targets on Saturday. Hezbollah said 6 of its fighters were killed. Meanwhile, the US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has said Washington will send more military assets to the Middle East. It's a move in support of Israel and to strengthen the US defense posture in the region, following, quote, recent escalations by Iran and its proxy forces. Austin said a terminal high-altitude area defense system and additional Patriot defense missile system battalions would be sent, and more troops put on standby. The US has already deployed significant naval power to the Middle East in recent weeks.
Well, what we understand is that the Russian-American journalist Alsu Kurmasheva had her detention extended by 72 hours on Friday in case where she is accused of violating Russia's law on foreign agents. Rachel Judah has the latest on this story.
Detained Russian-American journalist Alsu Kurmasheva has had her custody extended by 72 hours. The Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty journalist has been accused of violating Russia's law on foreign agents. The Prague-based journalist was detained and had her passport seized at the airport in June. She had entered Russia in May for a family emergency. According to court documents, Komasheva was fined just over $100 earlier this month for failing to register her US passport with Russian authorities. She was charged a week later with failure to register as a foreign agent, an offence that carries up to 5 years in prison. She is the second US journalist to be arrested and charged in Russia since the start of its war in Ukraine, which has sunk relations between Moscow and Washington to their lowest level in more than 60 years. In March, Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich was arrested on spying charges, which he denies. Speaking on Thursday, US spokesperson Matt Miller called the journalist's detention harassment and urged US citizens to return home. In response, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters there was no campaign to persecute US citizens. The media organization that Komasheva works for is funded by the US Congress and designated by Russia as a foreign agent, meaning it gets foreign funding for activity deemed to be political. Radio Free Europe has called for Komasheva's immediate release, calling her a, quote, highly respected colleague, devoted wife, and dedicated mother to 2 children. No date has been set for a trial for either Gershkovich or Komasheva. It is unclear whether Komasheva might face further charges.
16-year-old Armita Giravand, who fell into coma earlier this month following an alleged encounter with officers over violating Iran's hijab law, is said to be brain dead. Iranian state media has reported on her condition recently. Let's take a look.
Iranian state media on Sunday reported a teenage girl is brain dead after an alleged encounter with officers earlier this month over violating the country's hijab law. CCTV footage from Tehran's metro on October 1st shows an unconscious person being dragged out from the cabin. Iran has denied that 16-year-old Armita Giravand was hurt after a confrontation with officers enforcing the mandatory Islamic dress code. Rights groups have been concerned that Giravand might face the same fate as Mahsa Amini, whose death last September in the custody of morality police sparked nationwide anti-government protests. 2 journalists were handed long prison sentences on Sunday by an Iranian revolutionary court over their coverage of Amini's death, according to state media. Nilufar Hamidi and Elaha Mohammadi were sentenced to 13 and 12 years in prison, respectively. Their charges included collaboration with the U.S. government and acting against national security. Lawyers for the 2 journalists have rejected the charges.
Meanwhile, South Korea, Japan and the United States have conducted a joint aerial exercise near the Korean peninsula on Sunday afternoon onwards. Now, this marked the first ever collaboration between these 3 countries. The purpose of the drill was to enhance their abilities in responding to North Korea's nuclear and missile threats, as stated by South Korea's Air Force. It involved US B-52 strategic bomber along with fighter jets from all 3 nations. During the Camp David summit in August, the leaders of Japan, South Korea and the United States agreed to conduct annual trilateral exercises and establish a crisis communication hotline. Additionally, and on Sunday it is being said that the US and South Korea military had announced the successful completion of the joint anti-submarine exercise called Silent Shark, which took place from October 6 to 22nd near the US naval base in Guam. These exercises involved the Los Angeles-class fast-attack submarine USS Topeka and the Son Won Lin class diesel-electric submarine that has been used by the RKOS Jungji. Now, shares in Taiwan's Foxconn, a major supplier of Apple's iPhones, dropped as much as 3% after a report that the company is the subject of tax audits and land use probes in China.
Shares in iPhone maker Foxconn tumbled on Monday. They fell as much as 3% in morning trade. The slide followed a weekend report that the firm faces investigation by watchdogs in China. That includes tax audits and probes over land use. The reports came from China's state-backed Global Times newspaper and weren't confirmed by officials. Foxconn said in a statement Sunday that legal compliance was a fundamental principle and it would actively cooperate with the relevant authorities. The Taiwan-based firm makes most iPhones at a factory in China's Henan province. It employs around 200,000 people there, but also has smaller plants in the south of the country. On Monday, it declined to comment further on the reports. But it all comes less than 3 months before Taiwan votes in presidential and parliamentary elections. Foxconn's billionaire founder, Terry Gou, is among those running, though he's lagging badly in the polls. He has accused Taiwan's ruling party of taking the island close to war with China by being overly hostile. Gou says he could maintain peace by using his extensive business contacts in China and the US.
Well, the armed forces of the Philippines recently released a footage showing Chinese vessels obstructing a Philippine boat attempting to deliver supplies in the disputed waters of South China Sea. The incident is part of an ongoing series of maritime clashes. Let's take a look at this report.
China and the Philippines traded accusations over a collision in disputed waters of the South China Sea on Sunday as Chinese vessels blocked Philippine boats supplying forces there. Armed forces of the Philippines released this video showing the Chinese vessel grazing the hull of the Philippines boat. The collision occurred during the Philippines' resupply mission to troops stationed on a rusted World War II-era transport ship used as an outpost on the shoal. China's Coast Guard said they were lawfully blocking the boat from transporting illegal construction materials to the warship. Manila responded by condemning in the strongest degree the dangerous blocking maneuvers of the Chinese vessel. The U.S. sided with the Philippines, offering support to its ally. In a statement on Sunday, the U.S. State Department said China's actions amounted to repeated harassment in the South China Sea and that they were dangerous and unlawful. Beijing claims sovereignty over almost the entire South China Sea, including parts of the exclusive economic zones of Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Vietnam. The Permanent Court of Arbitration in 2016 said China's claims had no legal basis.
Well, we have an artificial intelligence story for you at the end of this bulletin, and it is about how artificial intelligence is helping to train brain surgeons to perform critical operations more effectively and safely. According to UK's National Hospital for Neurology and Neurosurgery, there is a huge attempt by the AI to ensure that would-be neurosurgeons have an idea of how they operate the patients and how they can upskill when it comes to complex neurosurgeries. Take a look.
Could artificial intelligence be used to make brain surgery safer? At this university in London, trainee surgeon Daniel Khan is taking part in a mock operation, during which he's assisted by a real-time video feed, as is typical in brain surgery. But what's new here is that the footage is being analyzed by AI to help Khan better understand what he's seeing. The AI system, which is under development at University College London, highlights sensitive or critical structures in the brain. Neurosurgeon Hanny Marcus believes it has the potential to make brain surgery safer and more effective.
So I'm very bullish that in the medium to long term, the AI will be helping lots of surgeons do lots of operations better than they otherwise can.
Marcus says the AI system analyzed video of more than 200 pituitary gland tumor operations and gained around 10 years worth of experience in a fraction of the time. That knowledge means the AI can now not only help navigate to the correct area of the brain, but also know what should be happening at any stage of the procedure, making it a valuable training aid.
What we're really trying to do is apply AI, or artificial intelligence, to support surgeons doing brain tumor surgery at the base of the brain. And what this practically entails is us training the AI with hundreds of videos, telling it, if you like, what structures are what, and then at some point over that period, the AI becomes really good itself at recognizing things and able to support other surgeons who are perhaps less experienced in advising them what to do next.
Assistant Professor of Robotics and AI, Sophia Bano, explains how that might look in a real operation.
There can be scenarios where clinicians unintentionally are very close to a very critical structure such as optic nerve. This can have any damage or a slight more pressure on the optic nerve can have long-term complications on the patient side. So this whole tool will alert the surgeon during the procedure if there is any risk of potential complications, so they can recalibrate themselves during the procedure.
Khan, who was also involved in developing the software that is now helping him learn, says the AI system has been a valuable tool in his training. It could also provide him with step-by-step guidance during a procedure, similar to having a senior surgeon standing over your shoulder.
I think as I progress as a surgeon, there might be stages where I wonder, have I done enough of a particular part of the procedure and should I move on? And actually having that sort of assistant in the background as a reassurance to look at and say, well, yeah, actually at this stage, out of the hundreds of videos of experts that this algorithm has watched, the experts would probably start moving on to the next phase. It's a useful double check.
According to UCL, the system could be ready to be used in operating theaters within 2 years.
Well, that's all in this edition of the Bulletin. Stay tuned to News 9 for more on the other side.
Hello everyone, Namaskar. I'm music composer Ricky Cage, 3-time Grammy Award winner and a United Nations Goodwill Ambassador, and you're watching me